Not every Sunday has to be packed full of meal prep and freezer meals. Sometimes all I need to do is just get a few things done, and that is what is happening today. I am enjoying a relaxed Sunday reset for the week ahead. The night before filming this, I got some whole grain sourdough sandwich bread dough going. I made this with fresh milled hard white wheat. Often, because I need the light for filming to put things on YouTube, I make my sourdough bread dough in the morning and then I bake it in the evening. It's just easier to film that way. But really, in my regular day to day, I really prefer making the dough at night and then letting it bulk ferment while I sleep. I think that's the most effective way to make sourdough bread, because while you're sleeping, it's just doing its thing. And then in the morning, you can shape it and let it go for its second rise. And that's one of the things that I really like about sourdough, is because it does take a long time to ferment, it's actually more flexible with schedules, at least in my opinion, in my experience. So if it works better for you to make the dough in the morning, then totally by all means do that. Now, like I mentioned, this is whole grain wheat, so it takes a little longer to rise. I let it go for a second rise, probably for about 4 hours before baking it in the oven at 375 for about 45 minutes. This is actually my regular sourdough sandwich bread recipe, which is over on my blog. The only thing that's different here is that I used fresh milled flour rather than regular all-purpose flour. We will revisit that bread toward the end of the video when we eat it for dinner. But about a week ago, I made a bunch of fall freezer meals. They are actually in a fall freezer meal video that I posted on YouTube. I will leave a link for that in the description box so you can check it out. But we've actually been eating those freezer meals all week, so I don't really need a whole lot of meal prep. But I do have some pantry items that need to be dealt with. So I have these big bags of dried beans that I got from Sam's. So I am going to cook some of them and freeze them so I can use them in a week or two. And then the rest I'm actually going to store for long-term storage. To cook beans for freezing, ideally you want to undercook them slightly. I reduced the time by 2 minutes. Next time I think I'll reduce the time by 5 minutes in the pressure cooker. They were still pretty perfectly cooked. But on this particular Sunday, it is a pretty chill day at home. So while the beans were cooking, I did a few other tasks. And I think that's kind of a nice way sometimes to approach a Sunday reset, because often we have this block of time on Sundays. We're going to bust out all these freezer meals and get all these things done. But it is nice sometimes to do all of these tasks and chores in a way that feels a little more leisurely. We'll get back to the beans in a little bit when they are cooked. And in the meantime, my daughter and I are making some Einkorn chocolate chip cookies. And I am making these with 100% whole grain, fresh milled Einkorn flour. So the reason why I am making these cookies on my Sunday reset is because I need pictures of them for my blog, because I put out the blog post for the Einkorn cookies this week. So sometimes my Sunday resets are really about getting a lot of meals made and food made, but other times I need other things done to make my week easier. I've shared a lot of Sunday resets over the last couple of months that have freezer meal ideas and ingredient prep ideas, but sometimes for me, the best thing I can do is get a couple of tasks checked off that are easy and fun for me to do on a Sunday afternoon with my daughter, for example. You can get the recipe for these Einkorn chocolate chip cookies over on my blog at moonandmagnolia.com. And really, this is a pretty classic chocolate chip cookie recipe. The only real difference is that it uses Einkorn flour, and I also always add in an extra egg yolk to my cookies because it makes them so rich and delicious. If you don't have Einkorn flour, in most recipes, you can swap Einkorn with whole wheat flour at a 1-to-1 ratio. Now here, what I want to show you is half of the cookies I made on a regular baking sheet with parchment paper and half I made on a stone cookie sheet. And even though it's the exact same cookie, they baked totally differently. The cookies on the left are from the regular baking sheet and the cookies on the right are from the stone cookie sheet. And what's really interesting is the stone took half the time as the regular cookie sheet and they still got darker. So I don't know if one's better than the other, but the end result is really different between the two different types of baking sheets. And just one other little hot tip about cookies. If you want a thin cookie like the ones I made, as soon as they come out of the oven, take a fork and just press some of the air out of them. And if you want a fluffier cookie, chill them in the fridge for about 30 minutes or so before baking them. But in the meantime, the beans are done. So once the beans are finished in the Instant Pot, I am putting them on a cookie sheet. We're here again. And I am smoothing them over into a single layer just so they can cool faster. The deal with freezing anything is you always want the food to be completely down to room temperature before bagging it. And ideally, if you can even refrigerate it overnight, that's even better, but I don't always have time to do that. So while the black beans are cooling, I am then making some pinto beans. And I have these giant bags of beans that I don't want to store in plastic because I want them to stay good for a long time, of course. And also, I promise you, I'm going to knock that bag over and spill it in the pantry. So I really love these containers. I got these from Sam's Club. This is actually what I store all of my wheat berries in too. So I washed them and made sure they were completely dry. You don't ever want to store anything in a container that has water in it because that will create mold. And then those go right into the pantry. And once the beans are dry, I am scooping them up and putting them into sandwich bags. So a can of beans usually has about a cup and a half of beans in it. I tried to put a cup and a half into each bags, but my 3-year-old was helping me. So who knows how much is really in there. I kind of lost track along the way, but I am putting these in sandwich bags. Honestly, I think a food saver is a better route for this because it's easier to seal them and bag them flat. Anytime I can, I try to freeze my food in like a thin, flat sheet because it thaws a lot faster. But I did not feel like busting out my vacuum sealer. Sometimes the noise scares my daughter a little bit, so it's just easier to do it this way. But once I have everything bagged up, I'm then putting it in a freezer bag. Dried beans are a super budget-friendly way of keeping healthy food around, but they're not very convenient unless you have them prepared in advance. So obviously I froze these. I really wanted to can them, but I just didn't really feel like canning them on this particular day because I was just trying to chill at home and enjoy my Sunday with my daughter. But I will be canning beans soon and sharing that on YouTube, so stay tuned for that. We have plenty of food left from those freezer meals, but we do have some veggies in the fridge that need to be used up, and I try to keep my daughter a part of the grocery shopping experience and ask her what she wants to have. And so when my husband and my daughter were out at the store, she picked out some corn on the cob. Maybe not my go-to for October, but she loves it. So I am making this on a sheet pan. And I'll be honest, this was the first time I've ever roasted corn on the cob in the oven. And it was really good, by the way. So I am just putting the corn and rainbow cauliflower, also from Sam's Club. Obviously, we went on a Sam's Club shopping trip recently. And I'm putting that on a preheated baking stone and then smothering it with butter, some salt and pepper, and then some freeze-dried mixed herbs from our garden. And then I'm popping this right in the oven. I think it was at 425 for about 20 minutes. Every Sunday reset is a little bit different and the needs for the week ahead are different. So how I handle that, of course, is different. But almost every single time I like to prep some veggies in advance so that way we have nutritious food that can be just thrown into anything. My husband has to go into the office a few times a week, so he packs a lunch and throws veggies in it. We put it on rice bowls, we throw it into tacos, soups, whatever we are having. And the other thing I am doing this evening is making a meatloaf because even though we have those freezer meals, we are starting to get a little bit low. And by the end of the week, we are going to want some other things to eat. And a meatloaf this time of year is a go-to. Now, this is the most simple meatloaf, just simple ground beef, some sourdough breadcrumbs, which I've shared on YouTube a lot, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, or however you say it, I always say that wrong, salt, pepper, and the secret ingredient, if you ask me, is celery seed, and 2 eggs. And I'm just putting it in this little loaf pan. Fun fact, I have had this loaf pan for more than 20 years. It's a little hard to see here, but I am topping it with ketchup, honey, and a little bit of cumin. I also really like that with sriracha in it too for a little extra spice, but because we have a 3-year-old eating it, I usually leave that out. And my husband made one of his all-time favorite things with it, a meatloaf sandwich, and made with that whole grain sourdough bread from the beginning of the video. Not every Sunday reset has to be packed full of tasks for the week ahead. Sometimes it's nice just to enjoy a few leisurely things that can be helpful during the week ahead, but also giving yourself the space to just enjoy being home. I hope this video today gave you a few useful tips, but also inspired you to do a couple of things that need to be done, but also enjoy your day. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and I'll see you again next time.